Hey, and welcome to another Revit video. In this video, we'll be covering technically part 2 of the Hide and View tool, which is this light bulb up here in the Modify tab. In part 1, I covered hide elements and hide category. And in this second part, I'll cover hide by filter. But what I'm actually going to do is have this entire video be centered around filters themselves, because filters are more versatile than just being used for hiding. So this entire video will be about filters, and you can find filters if you go to View. In the View tab, you can see filters right there. So if I click on filters, we can see I've got a lot that are pre-built. I'll go over a few of these to give you an idea of what they are, and I'll go over the interface of filters. But the first thing I want to say about filters is you might have used them to hide elements like the Hide and View tool. But keep in mind that this is something I want you to keep in mind moving forward forever when it comes to filters, because filters are not specifically used to hide and show elements. Filters are a way of filtering, obviously, but basically selecting certain elements to then do something with those selected elements. And in one case that could be hiding, in another sense that could be overriding the colors, the cut lines, whatever it might be, different patterns. So that's something I wanted to stress in the beginning, that filters are not just to hide, they are to really select specific elements that you want to manipulate after that. So let's get right into filters. Filters are something that I use quite often in my daily work, because I can essentially get down to something specific when it comes to an element that I need to show a specific way or hide. So the idea is that you use a filter to get to a certain element, and then you can manipulate that element from there. So I'm going to go through all of those steps before I go into the specific filters. So this is filters, and this is the tool, I guess you'd call it, to build and create your own rule-based filters. All filters are based on rules. It's something you define and you develop as one specific rule. So if you look at the left here, I'm going to minimize that, we've got rule-based filters and selection filters. I'll cover selection filters the very last in this video, and that's because they're very different than rule-based filters. So I'm going to hit OK. I don't care about any of that right now, but I want to show you the different ways you can get to the filters. Of course, you can come up here in View and click Filters, and whenever you do that, this is the entire project's worth of filters. This is absolutely everything. And every time you see the screen, just know that. So I could also go to Modify, and I can select an element, and just like before, we could hide elements, hide the category, or hide by filter, and it brings me into the visibility graphics overrides of this particular view. And you can see that it's already taken me to the filters tab, and I've got no filters currently in this view, but if I wanted to, I could add one or edit and make new ones from here. And if I go to edit new, it's going to again take me to this master filters tool that you saw in the View tab. I'll hit OK. I can get out of there, and I can also go to the view properties over here at the left, visibility graphics overrides. I can then go to filters tab, and that's the same place that I was before. So there's a number of ways you can get here, and I typically go to visibility graphics by hitting the shortcut VG, but that's all the different ways that you can get to the filters. So filters, just like hiding or overrides or anything, something else to be aware is that they are per view. It is per view, which means that if I add a filter and change the overrides of elements based on that filter in a view, it's only going to affect that one view. I can't do that globally throughout the entire project or anything like that until I add those to a view template. And so if I go into this view template here for this 3D view, you can see I have visibility graphics / override filters. And again, this is the same looking visibility graphics with the filter tab, except I'm now in a view template, and you can apply this view template to any view in Revit. And so you could, the perks of view templates is that you could apply them to multiple views. And so I would only have to go and add the filters that I want for this type of view template once. So that's just something else to keep in mind moving forward. So now let's actually get into filters themselves. So I'm going to go to View and Filters and Rule-Based Filters. Everything you're going to use beyond this white selection box over here, everything that has to do with categories or filter rules is all based on the rule-based filters. So if I click on section _ building, and keep in mind these are just the names I've named these rule-based filters on. I have categories, and every rule and every filter is based on a particular category. And so if you scroll here in the middle, you can see every type of category that exists within Revit. There's a filter list here, and that's based on the different disciplines that are built into Revit. I typically do not mess with these or change these at all because I still would like them all available for a particular reason. So if I uncheck mechanical, I'm going to lose that air terminal because that particular category falls within the mechanical discipline. I don't care about that right now. I just want to see everything at this point. So if I hit hide unchecked element or hide unchecked categories, I could see that every category I have selected that I want to use for this particular rule is the only one that shows up. So it's a good way of checking that you have the correct categories that you want to select moving forward into whenever you want to make the rule itself. So I have the option of selecting one category to work with in the rules, or I could choose to select multiple categories. I can have one rule or one filter work with many different types of categories in Revit. And so right now I have the sections selected, so the section categories. And if I hit something else, let's say air terminals, then I may or may not get this pop-up, and this pop-up says the selected set of categories requires that the filter criteria be reset. The filter criteria refers to the filter rules I have over here at the right, and in this case, because I had this rule set up prior, I'm now asked to either reset these or continue with these same settings, but just know that not all of my categories are going to be affected. So in this case, I'm going to hit no because I want to keep my sections as the only category I'm using for this rule. And so at the right, I have the option to choose and or. Starting with Revit 2019, these filters introduced the option of using or, which is fantastic. Before you were stuck with and. So, and when I say ands or ors, you're now to the point where you're trying to filter down, you're trying to get to something specific within the sections category to manipulate. And just remember that filters are trying to get to a specific selection that you decide based on filter rules. So if I choose sections over here in the categories, you can see I've got sections showing up there as my category. Looking at the and or, the and is saying if I have three different ways of filtering, whether it's through family and type, comments, or a mark value or anything like that, if I have three different options that are all set to and, that would mean that for this filter to work or to properly execute, all of those must be true, which you can see here. It says extra clarification and all rules must be true. Now if I change this to or, that means that I could have three different events that this filter is looking for, but maybe only one of them is true. And in this case, if I had three and I used or for all of them, then any rule may be true, meaning that just one rule would have to be true for this entire filter to work. So this filter is set up as an and, And it doesn't matter actually, because I have only one set that I'm having, or one specific rule that I have this filter working towards. And that's after the category is selected. You can see that I have sections, and the category is seen right there. And if I go to something else and I add a different one, let's say I add doors, and I hit yes, the selected set of categories requires that the filter criteria be reset. Do you wish to continue? Yeah, I'd like to continue. You can see that category that was sections is now changed to all selected, and that's because I have multiple categories selected at this point. So right now I'm going to uncheck doors. You can see I can get sections back. If I check doors only, I see I have doors. So let's change that to doors, or let's change that to sections. And what I'm doing with these different section filters is I'm using them to isolate a specific section type. So what I want to do is use family and type. So this is where filters get kind of weird, kind of crazy. There's almost an infinite number of ways you can begin to manipulate elements in Revit through filters. And that's because you have the option to use any set that, or any piece of this sections category as a means to filter by. And so I could use detail level, so the particular detail level that view is set to, maybe the view the discipline is within, or the family, whether that's in the section is in a phase, existing, new construction, whatever it might be, depending on what sheet name or number that it's on, the view category that this particular view falls in. Maybe you have a particular name. So right now, like I said before, I want to keep this at family type because I want to get down to a very single and specific type of section view. And so after you decide how you're going to filter, again, the next option you have is how you get to that. So now I've said that I want to look at all the sections in the project, and now I want to look at all the sections in the project by family and type. So now I have all of the sections by family and type, but I want to get to a specific one. And so there's equals, does not equal. Using equals says I want to get to a specific one. Does not equal says I want to use all but this one. That can be kind of confusing at sometimes. Greater than, if you're using numbers or whatnot, you can put in a particular number, and everything that's greater than that number will be selected. And so you can see how these might begin to work with the different family types. Does not contain, this kind of another way to say does not equals. Has value, has no value. You may have a particular parameter that doesn't have any value, and you don't want to deal with any of those elements that have no value. So you could say has a value, and you won't have to worry about anything that has no value. So I'll hit equals. And right now I'm at the point where I have sections. I have all the family and types of all the sections in this project, and I'm looking for a particular one that equals. And if you see the drop down here, these are the different types of views that I have in the project. And in this case, it seems kind of funny that it's ignoring the fact that I have different types of views for sections, because I only have these 4 different section types, and that's okay. I know what I want. So I want, in this case, because I've called this filter section building, I want to choose sections building section. So this is the type of section that it is a building section. So what this filter is saying altogether is I want to have these specific sections, and I'm looking for a family and type of those of the section categories, and that one equals sections building section. So every instance of section building section, if I have this filter applied in a particular view, will be affected. So maybe that doesn't make much sense. Maybe it sounds like a freaking mess. I'm so sorry if it does, but to better display this, I'm going to hit OK. And now I'm going to go to, I've got this level 1 floor plan of just this basic layout, and I've got some different section marks here. So these full building sections here are going to fall into that category where you see building section. I've also got a wall section there, a wall section there, and I've got an enlarged blow up right there. So I'm going to go to this enlarged blow up, and now I've got the same sections just within a smaller portion of the window. So now you can see full building section, building section, building section, wall section, and yes, I've got 2 restrooms here, but for the sake of this video, I have modeled in a stair because I've got 2 sections here that fall under vertical circulation. Both of these are vertical circulation. And so now what I want to do is implement filters so I can only see vertical sections. And maybe this view is a bad example, but you might say that this is going to be considered one of my vertical circulation enlarged floor plans for this stair in particular. So when I have those views, I may not care about seeing all these building sections and wall sections flying through this view if all I care about is the floor plan of the stairs. But the thing I do care about is seeing these different vertical circulation sections, because that does apply to this view that I'm looking at for the stairs. So how can we tackle this? Well, we can tackle this with filters. So if I hit visibility graphics, it's going to take me to the model categories. I want to go to filters, and because this is blank, that means I have no filters that are applied into this view, and they're not working towards affecting anything. So what I want to do at this point is hit add, because I know I have some. So all of these filters that show up in the filters, like in the master filters tool, I can see they're working here. And what I need to do is bring them into this particular view. And so what I'm going to do is bring in that section building. I'll hit OK. And if I hit OK again, you can see nothing happens. Well, that's because what I've done with the filter is just basically this is just saying what filters do. Filters get you to the point where now I have all of the building sections selected. So the rest of this whole filters dialog is saying, hey, what do I want to do now that I've selected all of these building sections? Well, by default, every single different filter you add is going to come in as visible, and you can see that under visibility that they're checked. I'll remove this one. And so at this point, sections, this building sections, they're currently visible, and there are no overrides whatsoever. I have the option of simply half-toning that selection. If I hit apply, you can see that all of my building sections are now half-toned. So like I said before, filters are just a way of selecting something specific based on something you determine in the rules. So now I can begin to manipulate all these building section markers in this particular view based on how I want, and that's through different overrides. I can add colors, whatever it might be. I can halftone it. Right now I'm going to remove the halftone, but what I want to do, because this floor plan or this enlarged plan is just to show the stairs, I don't care about seeing building sections, wall sections, whatever it might be in the project or in this view, because I only want to see vertical circulation sections. So I want to turn the building sections off. So I can hit apply. You can see I lose all of those building sections, but I get to keep all the others because this filter was specifically pointed to only the building sections. So now I can also add maybe interior sections. I'll add wall sections. And again, if I hit OK, because I didn't do anything to those, they're not going to do anything. Nothing will change with those because I didn't change the visibility, overrides, or anything. So now I don't want to see those either. I'll hit OK, and now I'm left with exactly what I want. I've got only these vertical circulation sections. And so if this were truly an enlarged floor plan for this stair, this is how I'd want it presented. I'd want to only see sections that are pertinent to the stair itself, in this case the vertical circulation sections. So if I hit visibility graphics and I go back to my filters, you can see all of these are not visible, and that's why. So that's a good way and pretty quick way of getting to where you might want to as far as visibility. Now, I'm gonna go back to my 3D view, and I see everything here. I've got all kinds of different things, and I'm actually gonna build a filter from scratch. I'm gonna go to filters. Actually, I'll go to the filters here. These are all the filters in the project. I previously made this example filter, but I'm gonna delete it and make it once again. As you create a new filter, you just simply give it a name. I'll call this example. Actually, I'll just call this furniture. I'll hit OK, and you can see furniture's right there. I can check none. I like to check none as far as the categories goes to know that I'm starting with none. And so maybe I want to do is come down here. It's because I chose furniture. I want to check furniture. I can check which I've selected with the hide unchecked categories, and I can see clearly I have furniture right there. And to confirm that once again, you can see that the category is furniture. And so at this point, maybe I simply go by level. Maybe I want to do something different with furniture on different levels. And so I can choose level, I can choose equals, and level 1. And so maybe what this is doing is targeting all elements that fall within the furniture category on level 1. Or I could do, because this is level, I could say does not equal level 2. And maybe at this point with this, maybe I'd want to just target every furniture element that's not on level 2 in the entire project. Maybe I have 25 levels, and I don't want to look at the furniture on level 2, or I don't want to manipulate the furniture on level 2, and so every other piece of furniture on every other level will be targeted. I could say is at or below level 2. There's almost an infinite number of ways you can begin to get down to a specific set of elements that you want to manipulate in Revit. So at this point, I'm going to keep this equals level 1. So this is saying all my furniture on level 1 I want to manipulate. I'll hit OK, and now I'll go to the visibility graphics of this view, hit filter. I will add that furniture filter. I'll hit OK. OK, and now it's applied, and because I didn't change anything with the filter, it's just pointing to all the furniture and doing nothing else. So now what I want to do is maybe I can want to turn that to halftone. I can hit OK, and you can see that all my furniture in here is now halftone. I'll go back to my filters for this view only. Maybe I want to change the pattern and I want to turn them all red. I'll put a solid fill and make them red. I'll hit OK, OK. I'll hit apply, and now all my furniture is both half-toned and red. Again, this is just for this view only. Maybe I don't want to see that halftone, and I can just hit OK and see all of my furniture is in red. You could see how you could start to use filters in many different ways when it comes to presentation purposes for particular views, or for documentation and cleaning up specific views for documentation purposes. I use filters for both of those reasons all the time. So that's a very quick way of getting to a very simple rule, a very simple filter. So I'll create another rule, and let's call this example. And I'm going to check, I'll uncheck everything, and I'll just choose doors. So, like I said, with new Revit 2019 actually was the ability to choose and or. So, I'm going to show an example of using and with doors. So, I've got doors, and let's say I use let's say we want to filter by width. And we could say is greater than or equal to 3 feet. And then I'm going to also add another rule. And remember, because I have and, both of these must be true. And then I'll look for a specific door that has, what do we want to do here? Let's say that the family name. Maybe this is, I want to look for a specific door which has a specific family that is equal to or greater than 3 feet. So I'm looking for very specific doors. I'm really getting down to it now. I'm looking for a particular family name that is just an interior single. A door that's an interior door and it's a single door. And I'm going to hit OK. And I'm going to zoom in here and we're going to look at some of these doors. So I've got this door and I can see that that is door single. The width is greater than or equal to 3. And you can confirm that not only by the name, and I'd actually recommend not confirming that by the name, but the width in here is set to 3 feet. Perfect. So now I'll go back to the visibility graphics of this view and look at filters. I'll leave the furniture on, but now I want to add this example to deal with the doors. So let's first halftone these doors to see what's going to happen and see which doors are affected. My guess is going to be most of these doors. Yeah. So there we go, most of these doors. So to show this, I'll edit the type. I'm going to duplicate this door. I'm going to make this a 2-foot door. This is somewhat obvious. Make this 2 feet wide. I'll hit OK, and as soon as I do that, you can see that there's a distinct difference in this door, which is 3 feet wide, same family name, as this door, which is 2 feet wide. And that's because the filter is no longer, this example filter I have that's working with the doors is no longer affecting this 2-foot door, because if you remember, it was looking for doors that were at least 3 feet wide. And again, just like I did with the all of the furniture, I can begin to adjust the color or anything, the presentation, whatever it might be, of all of the doors. And so I've added a particular hatch pattern to all these doors, and so they show up this way. So this is a good way of getting to a very specific set of doors. And because this door here is a double and not the single, it's also not affected by that filter. Okay, so that was an example of the filter using and. Sorry, let's go to this filter with and. So now I'm going to change this to or. And I want to change this value to 2 feet. So what this is saying is either of these must be true. The door is 2 feet wide, at least 2 feet wide, and the door name is this right here. It's an interior single door. So either of those can be true for the filter to work with that door, because I have or. Any of these rules can be true. So if I hit OK, what's happened now is if I look at the filter, I haven't changed the filter at all. I'm going to unhalftone it. I'll hit OK. So you can see now all of these doors are now affected by that filter. And now why is that? It's because that this door, which is 2 feet wide, does allow the or allows the filter to be true because it is 2 feet wide. But also in this case, I've got this door, which is it's not the single, if you remember. This is now a double, and I was looking just for the singles. But even though that's not true, this door is at least 2 feet wide. It is specifically 6 feet wide. So that's why the filter is also working with this double door as well as the 2-foot door. So that's another example of how to use filters, but with the or. So I'm going to make one final, call this example 2. I'll hit OK. I will choose none, and I'll use ceilings, and I see ceilings here. And for the purposes of this filter, I just want to show you some of the new options with Revit 2019 and specifically now 2020. What changed, like I said before, is that we now have the option to use or in our filter rules instead of just and, which is great. I was so for that. It makes so much sense that we have that option. If you're familiar with programming at all, ands and ors are very important when it comes to filtering. So all that to say, that's great. I love all that, but the problem that I have with filter rules right now is that if you see there's an add rule and an add set, and I didn't cover these because I didn't cover add sets because I don't think it's all that necessary. 90% of the time, I've never needed to use sets because they weren't there in Revit 2018, but now they're here. And so what do? So let's say I have ceilings. I'm looking for a particular area, and it's greater than 100 square feet. So I'm looking for a ceiling that has an area greater than 100 square feet. I'm going to add a rule, and now I'm looking for a mark value. So like this ceiling has a mark value, and it does not equal 2. So I'm looking for I'm looking for ceilings that are greater than 100 square feet that do not have a mark value of 2. That's great. And so I could keep going and adding rules for days if I need to get me down to a specific element or a specific set of elements that I'm looking for. So I can remove these by hitting the minus. And I can always change this to or if I want to change this to just look for one of these rules. So the second you hit add set, things get kind of weird because now you can see it's kind of like a tree. So I've got the and, which is having to deal with all of these rules up here, but then I've also got an or value here that has its own set of rules and set. So I could hit add rule here, and I'm still working with ceilings, but now I'm into, like, you'd call it the second level of the tree. So looking at this now, as much as I know about filters, this is throwing me for a loop. This is very confusing. It's not something I'd recommend you messing with because, especially if you're new to filters, because this can get so confusing and crazy in 2 seconds. And if anyone other than the person who created this filter rule is trying to edit this filter, there's just no way. It's insane. I think it's a bit too much to have thrown into the filter rules, to be honest, if I'm being honest. And so just like I did before, I could add rules to this or, and this could go on for essentially ever, which is actually the more scary part. There's no limit to this. So I'm going to expand this window just to make things that much more crazy to show you how ridiculous this can get. So all this to say, I don't think there's any reason why you'd ever need to do this, but it's so confusing. I've got an and an or, both which have their own set of, let's call it roots. There's this particular branch that has these roots, this branch that has these roots, but I could always go back to the top and add another rule, but this rule is going to fall within this top branch, and that's very confusing because this or, which is essentially stuck in the middle, can't be moved, and it's lodged in between here. I can also add another set to the main branch, and so I can have 2 different levels of branches, but now I can also add sets within these branches. So I can add another set that falls into like a 3rd branch in this 2nd branch. And I can do the same thing, adding different roots here. And you can see how this gets absolutely stupid and just looks ridiculous. And I cannot say why there's a particular reason. I can't say why this is in here, period. Why is this in Revit? Because if I show this to anyone, they would just give up. Obviously none of these values have anything filled out. This filter would not work, period. You would never see anything like this, but just having the option to add all of these different sets and rules to the point where it's infinite and it looks crazy and stupid. I don't understand it. So I'm going to stop ranting about all these filter rules that I may not have included in Revit, and that's specifically this add set. I just think it's too much. So one way you can get around this, if you find yourself, falling asleep on your keyboard, hitting on the add set button, you can always go to the top and hit the X's, and you can get rid of all these and get yourself back to where you might want to be and where it makes a little more sense. So that was a long and exhaustive tutorial over filters. There are some things that I like, which is most of the filters and filter rules, but there's some that I don't. So if I go back to filters here, I've got the rule-based filters, like I said in the beginning. I'm going to reduce this so you can actually see what's going on. I've got the rule-based filters, which is what we covered throughout this video. And I've got selection filters. So right now I don't have any selection filters. And if I go to hit new filter, I don't have the option of changing this to a different option, a selection filter. This is only whenever you see define rules, it's going to be a rule-based filter. So I'm going to hit cancel and cancel. And so now let's say I've got these 4 options here. Maybe I want to do something particular with this one option here. So I've selected this. I've selected every element that falls within this option. And under selection here in the modify tab, there's actually a save button. And what this is going to do is save the selection. And I'm going to call this floor plan 1. And I'll hit OK. And you can see nothing happens. That's fine, not a big deal. But one thing I can do is I can go to, I believe it is it's the Manage tab, and over here there's Selection again. And I can hit Load, and there it is. There's Floor Plan 1. And I can hit OK, and as soon as I do that, everything I've selected and saved in that selection will be selected again. And maybe I want to change these to something else. I want to change the overrides, whatever it might be. So that's great. It's very quick and easy to get back to a specific selection. And once I have those selected, I could hit Edit. I can choose the Floor Plan 1. And now maybe what I want to do is select different things, or deselect some things. I can deselect these walls. I can hit Edit, Floor Plan 1, Edit, and now I'm in this mode where now I can only select and mess with everything that falls within that selection. So I can take these 2 walls, go to Edit Selection there. I can say Remove from Selection, hit Finish. Again, I want to apply that to the selection filters and hit OK. And so now when I go to Load Floor Plan 1, I can see everything but those 2 walls are selected. I'm going to again do that, hit Load, hit OK. That is kind of funny. I do see both of those walls selected. I'm going to hit Edit again, Floor Plan 1. Now I'm within the... thought I was, at least I am now within the selection. Oh yes, you so weird. You have to go to Edit Filters, select the filter, hit Edit, and because it's a selection filter, you're now taken to this point. So I'm going to select both of those elements again, Edit Selection Set, remove from selection, and it didn't work before because now whenever I select this button, you can see there's those minuses by my mouse. I'll select that wall, you can see that they become halftone, grayed out. I could also choose multiple if I want to actually drag and deselect certain elements. I can hit Finish in that selection right there, and those are removed from my selection. I'll hit Finish Selection. Again, I was Floor Plan 1. I'll hit OK. That's great. So I'm going to load again just to confirm this time. Probably worked. Hit OK. Yes. So all of those elements are no longer falling within that selection. Okay. All right. All of that to say, if I go to Filters, I go to View, I go to Filters, now I actually have that selection filter right there and I can see it. So I can't do anything when it comes to rules or anything with the categories because that's a selection filter. And something to note with selection filters is obviously they're different than rule-based, like I just said, but there's nothing more that you can do with them. The only way you can edit them, like the contents of them is going through the way that I just did, was adding or removing specific elements to that selection. I can rename it here, I can delete it, but I can't necessarily make a new one. So something else I can do is I want to make another one with this second floor plan. So if I select all those elements, I can go to Filters, and you would like to think this works, and I'd like someone to leave me a comment below if they figure this out and how to use this, but if I hit New, because I have that selected, I should be able to use current selection. Maybe I'm missing something, but please let me know. Leave a comment down in the comments below. I would really like to know this. I've never been able to figure this out as to why this doesn't work. So because I have that selected in the background, I should be able to use select or even use current selection. I don't know. I'm at a loss for as to why that's not working. So one last way I could use the selections filter is if maybe I want to select all the doors again. I can select the door, I can select all instances in entire project. So now I've got all the doors selected of that particular instance right there. And maybe I want to save this, and I can say door single. So these are all the single doors of the project that are that type. I've saved that. And so now what I can do is I can go to the visibility graphics, filters. I can actually add these filters now. So door single. And this is going to act just like the rule-based filters. So maybe I want to change this to be diagonal, that's green. I'll hit OK. And now all my doors show up. So this is a good opportunity to say this normally doesn't take into account the different filters here. So something that you can do is you can move these up or down, and I'll say most of the time I don't come across an instance where this matters. But if you get to the point where you've got 5, 6 different filters here that start affecting the same element, this is where the moving up and down matters. So right now, this particular door single filter is attacking all the single doors of that particular type that we saw. And this example is attacking every door that's greater than 2 feet in width with the particular door name. So there might be it might be one door that is both affected by these filters. One door that's affected by both of these filters. So one way that you can have filters take precedent over another is if you move them up. So right now we can see that this door is green, and we can see it's green because of our pattern override right there. So maybe we want to see these doors that are green, but we want to see the doors that are blue with this crosshatch. That's more important. We want to see that before we see any of the green. So to do that, we can move that above, and because that is now above, any door that falls within this filter is now going to show up with the crosshatch instead of the green. If I hit OK, all these doors do change, and then again go back, and I can change the order. I can move the door single to the top and hit OK, and you can see all of those doors change to green because that filter is on top. So the furniture, because it's not affecting the doors, it doesn't matter where it is at all. This furniture could be really anywhere. But because I have 2 different filters attacking specific doors, if they're the same, that's whenever you need to start worrying about which filter is above or below the other. So just keep that in mind as well. So that was a long, and my gosh, I'm so sorry that this was freaking exhaustive. So many different things you could do with filters. I hope you found this video helpful. I use filters a lot in my daily life. I end up using lots of these different filters when it comes to different documentation purposes, whether it's showing or hiding different elevations in a particular view or sections. That's a real basic example of why I might use filters in a documentation environment, and anything here dealing with colors is another reason why I might use filters for a presentation. So I so hope you learned something. I'm sorry it was so exhaustive again. If you did learn something, please demolish that like button. It really helps me a lot. I really appreciate all the views and time you spend on my videos. It really does help me. If you enjoyed any part of this video, even just 30 seconds of this, please subscribe. There will be lots more videos coming out soon, and I've got lots more things planned for the future. If you do have something specific that you'd like me to cover or a question, you can ask that in the comments below. I'll get down to all of them. Don't worry about it. I'll even make a video for a specific topic if you have one and I haven't covered that yet. I sure hope you all have a wonderful day, and thanks for watching.